We cross now to Washington, from where we're joined by international and U.S. political commentator Calvin Dark. Calvin, it's morning where you are, so good morning, and thank you very much for talking to us.
Good morning to you.
I mean, we know what happened. We saw it unfolding on our television screens. We've had a lot of local commentators. We've had a lot of American voices in our ears. But just talk to me about what was in Calvin Dark's heart and mind as you watched what was happening on Capitol Hill.
Well, I had so many feelings. One, because of, with the pandemic, and as we work from our home offices, I live and work within 8-10 blocks of where all this was happening. So in the middle of the day yesterday, we're having alerts from, the mayor and other officials about the curfew. So that part, of course, was distressing. I was actually really, really made to feel a lot better as the congressional process went on, because as you were saying, there was nothing up for debate yesterday. Yesterday was ceremonial, something normally doesn't get attention. And so I was glad that no matter how bad it looked outside, I wasn't worried about the constitutional process being stopped. And the third thing that I felt, which a lot of us have felt in this country, is this. What happened yesterday is an example of why systemic racism in our country exists. And I tell you why. When Black Lives Matter protesters were here in Washington this past summer, there was a brigade around the Capitol to ensure its security. And as it should have been, it should be that secure. But the fact that white protesters armed were able to not only get into the Capitol, but sit in the chair where the vice president had just been rushed out of, to go into the personal office of the Speaker of the House and take a selfie, that is white privilege. So we've got all of those feelings wrapped up in a very stressful day yesterday.
There's a lot of talk, Calvin, about the cabinet invoking the 25th Amendment, and that allows a presidential cabinet to declare a president unfit for duty. And so they would remove Donald Trump from the office of the president for the remaining 2 weeks of his presidency. How realistic do you think that prospect is?
Well, before yesterday, because, there had been talk, because even before we saw the violence, President Trump has been inciting the violence since the election. I didn't really think that it was worth our time. When I saw what happened yesterday, I said there has to be something. And, of course, one of the options being the 25th Amendment. Another would be impeaching and removing. And it could be a censure by Congress. So I was open to all those options yesterday. So I think in theory, they are deserved, and the Congress should speak out. Now, in practice, I actually don't think it could happen, given that as I was reviewing the 25th Amendment and listening to constitutional scholars here, the way the timing is built in, that process could take around 3 weeks for the 25th Amendment, for example, and we don't have that much time. So we're kind of limited statutorily about what could be done.
And then brand Trump. Look, I mean, he's going to be out of office in 2 weeks. Who knows what toys he's going to throw out of what broken cots between now and the 20th of January. But he's promised an orderly transition. Let's hope he lives up to that promise. And then we've got 4 years of the Democrats, and the Democrats controlling the House and controlling the Senate, 50-50, but Kamala Harris having the deciding vote. So they control committee chairs, they control a whole lot of things that make it easier for them to govern. And then the Republican Party needs to look around and say, right, let's start building towards putting up a candidate, Joe Biden, unlikely to stand for another 4 years, up against Kamala Harris, whoever the Democrats might choose. There was a poll that I was reading today, released in Washington earlier, Calvin, saying that 43% of Republicans agreed with the storming of the Capitol Hill yesterday. And that makes you wonder just how much of an influence Trump is going to exert on the GOP into the next years. What's your view?
Totally. And, when it comes to who is going to represent the Republican Party, in the election in the next 4 years, which, in our country will probably start this spring, it will be Donald Trump, or it will be who Donald Trump wants as the representative. And here's why. If you look at the the Republican members of the House and Senate and the most influential of the leadership, they don't want Trump in office. Even the ones that agree with his policies, the way he has responded and reacted on several fronts is why they lost the presidential election and that the Senate went into Democratic hands. But here's the reality. It's like the poll you stated. Those leaders don't represent the base of their party by a mile. I saw, as well as, the kind of like the surveys you mentioned, they were interviewing some of the Trump protesters here who not only agreed with storming of the Capitol, but even worse, believed that Donald Trump won in a landslide and claimed that there's a mountain of evidence because the president said it was. And those are the people that Trump has firmly under his control. And so it will be Trump in 4 years or whomever Trump decides to take over that mantle.
Wow. That's a depressing prospect from where I sit. Calvin Dark, thank you very much for talking to us this morning. International political commentator based in Washington, co-founder of RC Communications.